What's up? This is Two Paychecks Podcast. For this episode, we interviewed Josh Dukes, a local activist who was shot on the inauguration day of Donald Trump, who it turns out is still our president in 2018. But anyway, on the day of the inauguration, protests were being staged all around the city, but one in particular drew a large crowd at the University of Washington campus because it was in opposition to everyone's favorite man-child troll wonder, boy wonder troll man, hate-preaching pedophiliac shock pundit, Milo Yiannopoulus, who was scheduled to speak on behalf of the college Republicans, UW campus Reporknobs, UW Peckerwood Republican Party, UW Junior Republicrats, future Olive Garden managers of America. Josh was shot and nearly killed, but was able to recover, and has since used his high profile to bring a more radical leftist perspective into the local discourse, appearing on a myriad of news outlets. In this interview, we kind of just dive right into the absurdity of the legal process. This is a really great example of all the failures of our so-called criminal justice system, in which Josh has had to weather his own re-victimization, as exemplified by this really bogus defense document that was submitted by the lawyer who is defending the Hokuanas, who are the couple that shot him. If you're not watching this on YouTube, I really recommend that you go look at it and just look at how ridiculous this document is. It'll just make for a much clearer picture of what we're talking about here. It's hilarious in a lot of ways. It's sad at the same time, but anyway, we get into what restorative justice means and how it could have been applied or could still be applied in this situation, and more broadly in ways to completely dismantle the punitive justice system. We then talk quite a bit about anarchist tactics going forward for bringing about the end of the capitalist state. We talk a lot about community support systems and how we all provide and receive huge amounts of invisible labor, and more specifically, the ways in which Josh received so much support and could not have made it through otherwise. When he was shot, he wasn't the only victim. Because after all, an injury to one is an injury to all. So cool. I hope you enjoy.
So January 20th will be the 1 year anniversary of the shooting. And I believe we will, even at that point, still be without a trial.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I have mixed feelings about. I think that's been the sort of the most challenging thing to deal with and to think about. It's just what is the outcome? How much and how little I have control over so many things, right? Mm-hmm. Cause there's I don't know. It's always really it's difficult for me to figure out how much I can talk about and how much I can't, right?
Mm-hmm. Personally or legally?
Legally, right? Because at the same time as there should be no reason that I can't talk about anything, right? Because I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But did I show you the defense document? There's a. Here, let me just. Cool. So this is this was put together by the defense for the arraignment.
And you wouldn't have seen this without a public records report?
No. They, there's a bunch of stuff that I don't know if I would have seen, and I still haven't seen the or haven't read any of the things that happened in court. I got secondhand stuff from about the defense lawyer Steve Wells. Yeah. Okay. So Steve Wells is a jackass, primarily.
Yeah. Is he a notorious jackass, or just so far from what you can?
Mainly from what I've gathered
from this case.
I can't tell. I can't tell if he's incompetent or kind of crazy, a Fox type of thing. So he began his arguments along the lines of I think he was saying something along the lines of like I was like throwing Molotovs and bricks or something, and there were like explosions going off, and like what the Soviet troops were parachuting in and shooting teachers, right? Right? like it's like no, dude, it's Red Square, not Red Dawn. You're wrong thing altogether. No idea. Yeah, so he's like saying all these things that like just didn't make any sense. I think the Molotov thing is actually a direct. He did say that there were bricks and Molotovs being thrown, even though there's no record of that anywhere.
Nobody. There's so many eyewitnesses that would be able to refute that.
Tons of video, tons of everything. Okay.
That's wild.
The other thing is like that he tried to say that when Mark said like don't shoot anybody and then talk to Elizabeth, that was like hearsay. Mm-hmm. And the prosecution's like, no, we have a video of it. It's like, well, you have a video of it? Like, did you read any of the chart? Like, there's like tons and tons of stuff in the charging documents, and it's like, so he either didn't read the charging documents and just like went in on like, like whiskey and coke, or like, or he's like incredibly intelligent playing a moron. I can't tell which one.
Distract or something.
But I mean, like, but then so like
gunk up, because that is a tactic, right? To gunk up the work so that it takes years and years to actually prosecute or something, right?
He was trying to like get them not to even press charges, right? So let's see here. The other thing was like, what was it? They said that on social media that I had said that I was, or I had talked about gathering up guns and like boots for training for the revolution, and that I should that we should use
guns and boots,
pellet guns to like train for the revolution.
Well,
like,
you would need the boots.
You'd need the boots.
No, you personally. You spent out 10 minutes talking about your boots.
Clearly, yeah.
Maybe you were having like a moment of like, what are they not like? Sort of predicting it. Like a premonition.
Premonition. Yeah. Well, so you like said all of these that I had like been promoting revolutionary things. Yeah, of course I do, but like it's not the way that he's saying it. So like he said I was like promoting all of this like revolutionary stuff online, but like some of the things he was saying were like very crazy and very specific.
You're like, yeah, I've been talking about revolution my whole life, but this is fucking nuts.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say those exact things. That's dumb.
Yeah.
So I went through a bunch of my social media to try and figure out like where did any of this stuff come from, like what kind of crazy things. And so we didn't have this yet, right? So like we just had this thing of like, he's trying to start a revolution. Oh my God! I'm like, yes, but where?
So you're pouring through your Facebook history.
So yeah, all through this, like looking for like anywhere that I might have said something that actually like could be something that somebody would even like bother to like mention in court, right? Like that would even be worth anything. And so finally we get this document. Let's start off by pointing out the fact that it's sideways. So I just want to point that out immediately.
Wait, I noticed that it was sideways. Yeah. I was waiting for it to kind of be a pulpit or something.
It's not going to, because it is actually sideways. It's a PDF. They like whatever they did. They like took I think they made it in probably PowerPoint.
Yeah, Windows.
And then
PowerPoint.
printed out to rotated it and then printed it out.
This guy is a lawyer, right?
He's so like I had this theory that it was bring your kids to work and have them do your job day, which like. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna do.
Oh,
this.
Okay. We're gonna read the computer sideways.
So let's see here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
So slide 5.
Okay.
Straight my name. GDC. So or the name that the state knows me as.
Yeah.
Obviously in
my
red.
My state handle.
My state handle. Yeah. The handle I have to Yep.
Yep.
And in red so that it's scarier.
Yeah. Because you're a commie.
Right?
What Josh said to the media.
So this is great because it's what I said to the media. This is released from GDC.
So just for the record, the GDC is short for the General Defense Committee, which is a branch of the Industrial Workers of the World, which is a pan-industrial union that Josh happens to be a part of.
Yeah, this is a release from the GDC. So this is one. It wasn't actually what I said to the media. In fact, I think this might have even been from Twin Cities GDC. So not only was it not what I said in the media, or even what anybody in Seattle said in the media, but what folks,
who don't know you at all.
Well, they kind of know me.
What,
Well,
yeah.
we sort of have talked. Like we've talked a little bit. We talked a lot since then. But that was it, right? Like,
So this is a press release.
this is a press release from not here,
Yeah.
and then a picture from the
racists
GDC.
afraid again.
Yeah,
A sign.
which seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to say.
Yeah.
Also,
it's good wordplay. Make racists afraid again. It's just a poster.
and this again is Twin Cities GDC. So this is not us.
And this was stuff that was released after the shooting.
Yeah. So I think
a
this
solidarity
is
call.
Yeah, February 24th. So this is well after the event. So this wasn't what was happening before.
Yeah.
This is after, and so this isn't me saying a thing. It is something that happened afterwards, and other people said from a long ways away.
Right.
So
You're guilty by association, though.
reality existing. Oh yes, and then.
Oh my god. Can we use some of this?
Yes,
okay.
please. I'll send it to you.
What do you have? Like a
Shit, this is fucking
lightsaber?
balloon. It's a balloon, right?
So
That's a balloon.
Balloons up your nose.
That's my machete.
Okay. All right.
So that was I was camping. I was camping out in the woods in this actually at a hacker conference. So there's a hacker conference out in the woods. So you do crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
Like you do absurd things. So I'm kind of dressed like a pirate with a big sword. This isn't terrifying. This is just me
Just being a
being.
goofball.
I'm laughing. Is this So and then me with a balloon through my that's the fact that this is the most menacing thing they could find. I found more menacing
For
things.
the record, yes, this Hex has two balloons up his nose, and
It's one balloon
going
it's
through.
one balloon that goes through my nose.
Yeah.
going through his nose to where his piercing is,
Through the
and
septum.
he's smiling, I believe,
Maniacally.
maniacally.
Definitely would describe that as maniacal.
Wow. All right.
So that was the first. I managed to get 2 through my nose. But anyway, so that one popped shortly afterwards. It was really unpleasant. So if you get a chance to stick a balloon through your nose while incredibly drunk, do it once. Tomorrow it's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt the next day.
But yeah, that's.
How do you even do that? Does it go up and down, or
no,
through?
it's
You
through
got
my
a septum
septum.
piercing.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's just through the
So
piercing hole.
I took a pen. I took a pen apart and then just so my friend got a balloon animal kit
Yeah.
for his birthday.
A bunch of long balloons.
So yeah, I jammed it through my nose with a piece of a pen, which says that I should get shot. That's what that clearly unequivocally says, that I'm dangerous enough to get shot because I can put balloons through my nose and laugh. I mean, if I can do that, I can do anything, right?
He's of questionable character, obviously.
And then they found my handle, my name.
Yeah. Hell, I didn't know it was Hex Hell.
Oh, so here's the thing. So I was saying earlier about my plot to get boots and use pellet guns to train for revolution. Yeah. So that was a synopsis of the book Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara.
Oh.
In which he talks about getting boots, that if you are attacking an army, like the guerrilla forces should either take all boots or no boots, because otherwise they can count your number, and that you should, use pellet guns to train and like some other things.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so I randomly have this synopsis of guerrilla warfare, which even like that, they could probably make an argument as like, oh, that's
normal
a thing.
people don't
Right,
debate,
whatever.
About,
So let's talk about the context of this for just a second.
Do you want to maybe read it? If we could read it.
Oh yeah. So so this is on Reddit. The previous thread was something like I've never read it out or never read it, but the book about guerrilla warfare by Che Guevara would have some good points in it, and I responded, it's a good read. One of the suggestions is to practice with pellet guns or BB guns when practicing in guns. When practicing with firearms isn't possible. It also talks about essentials for a guerrilla group. We must have a source of soap and boots. Everything else can be stolen from the enemy. Boots can't be taken because it's easier to identify how many people are in your group. Guns can be taken, et cetera, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
These are just like bullet points from the book.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, okay, so I could if this was sort of like taken out of context, I can kind of see why they might have put that in there, but like the actual context of that comment is about was from a survey that showed like I think it was like 70% of Republicans supported a military overthrow of the government and a military dictatorship.
That's why that's the number one reason why they're for the Second Amendment, because it'll allow you to overthrow a tyrannical government.
This is the hilarious thing, right? Is that technically, out of all the posts that I've ever made, this was pro-government.
That's like the most Republican post ever.
No, I was saying, like, I was literally saying, so I was saying, oh yeah, so the comment was about basically like, hey, if there's going to be, if there's a threat of a Republican overthrow of the government, this was under Obama. Anyway.
Yeah.
If there's a threat of a Republican overthrow of government, we should have leftist militias. Mm-hmm. And here's one of the things. So this is technically one could very easily understand this to be a pro-government post, because I'm saying that I would, that a leftist militia within that context would be potentially defending the government against a military dictatorship.
Right-wing dictatorship,
Which is like, I'm usually not pro-government. Out of all the things they came to show that I was dangerously anti-government, they chose the only thing, one of the only times I've ever made a post that actually was potentially pro-government. So there's like the grand
context is everything.
Now, was that on your Facebook page?
No, this is from Reddit.
So they looked around enough to find you on Reddit.
Oh yeah. There's some other stuff.
But you think so? How did they find that shit out? Is it just because you were Hex on Reddit?
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty easy to find you. I guess.
So just to be clear, also, this was on the Our Anarchism subreddit.
Yeah.
And so my so there's like a sublines you can add, like extra text that you can add past your name for like any specific subreddit.
Okay.
And just mine is Groucho Marx's Space Monkey. So the fact that they would take anything seriously from that is absolutely fucking absurd. So that's fun. Things about talking about anarchists and revolutionary hackers. A repost of something else. So I think this is. Yep. So this was from like a U District Antifa, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And I reposted a banner drop.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because you were telling everyone, hey, I'm going to go to this protest against the Milo speech, which is
and I'm like, hey,
pretty obvious
this is
that
gonna
you were
be,
there.
Yeah, this is going to be really scary and dangerous, and hey, here's some stuff that's happening. I don't even remember what this is.
Right-wing scum, your time has come.
So you just grab stuff from anywhere.
Yeah. So this is from my Twitter.
And again, we have to remind that this is all building a case for why it was okay for them to shoot you.
Right, which just again would mean that they would have had to have been stalking me in advance and following my retweets, which by this measure, of course, like, you know, it would be very easy to identify, you know, Trump as a Nazi, right? He retweets literal Nazis. I retweet anti-fascists. This is my favorite. This is my favorite reason that, you know, I deserve to get shot.
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty good meme.
This is my favorite meme.
This is the Homer Simpson meme for all you who are, you know, familiar with it. It's when Homer sinks into the bushes. What is the? He starts off. Oh yeah, he starts off as a Bernie supporter. Got Bernie on his shirt, sinks into the bushes, comes back out as full blown fucking revolutionary with a balaclava and Molotov cocktail.
So there it is. That's more random stuff. Oh yes, and I'm an anarchist. Apparently, this is the entire point of this whole thing. So this is a picture of like a banner drop of like or a banner being carried of "We are ungovernable."
Oh, nice. Wait, you're an anarchist? I'm fucking out of here.
Right? And so, like, I mean, like, that's it, right? At this point, they're just basically saying, like, they're just basically saying, like, it's okay to murder anarchists.
Anarchists. Yeah.
Like, that's the only statement that's being made with this slide, right? Is, like, that it's acceptable to murder people for simply being an anarchist. And that murdering an anarchist is always in self-defense. Mm-hmm. That's it, right?
If they're not dead, they should at least be in like a supermax prison somewhere.
Yeah, obviously.
You know.
So, yeah. So that was the thing. I was like completely like kind of like losing my mind for a day over, and then it turned out it was kind this absurd. It was hilarious.
Yeah. So you were thinking you didn't know what this was until the public records.
Yeah.
And then you get this thing with Homer Simpson with a mask in a Molotov cocktail, saying that like that's why you deserve to be shot. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. It's not. I'm just trying to make it more clear because we're looking at them. I don't know how it's going to sound, but, or how clear this is all going to be. But yes, it's really ridiculous.
Yep. And so that's the defense case, basically.
That's in a nutshell their whole defense, huh?
As far as I can tell, I mean, like I don't know what else.
By that, okay. So by that logic, I mean I'm not a lawyer or anything. By that logic, wouldn't that have meant that they had to have known you beforehand, which would then make it premeditated?
Which would then make it murder or attempted murder.
Attempted premeditated murder, whatever the terminology is for that. So instead of it being, oops, I misfired, which would probably be like a great defense, it's now premeditated.
So now where is the case now?
So we're still at basically nothing happening. Mm-hmm. There has been, let's see here. So there were charges pressed. So let's go back a little bit, right? They immediately fled the scene after shooting. Mm-hmm. As far as I understand, they fled the scene. They turned themselves in. Saying that they shot me in self-defense, and then all the video, like, and of course, and Breitbart, came out with their whole thing of like, that I was, a Nazi with brass knuckles or something like that, and a Bowie knife.
Oh, you were the Nazi.
Shit. Oh yeah, they said that I was the Nazi.
Wow.
So that's fun. They actually haven't deviated from that even after video has. So video came out showing very clearly what happened from like multiple angles, that I didn't have a knife or brass knuckles or anything in my hands. And all of this evidence, like, you know, came out. They initially, you know, tried to say, you know, again, that she tried to. There's some video that came out on the news a little while ago. A little while after I got out of the hospital. That was like something about like her basically practicing, Elizabeth, who shot me, like actually like practicing her defense of like, oh, he had a knife and like all of this and like I had to shoot, and then like and then the news shows like immediately that followed by like the video of me without anything in my hands repeatedly, and also the video of her like going to draw on people like several times. So she had a gun. Her gun was like basically behind her back, right? And so like there's multiple videos of her like reaching her hand back and like kind of like getting her stance. So she like, you know, stepping kind of like, you know, a little bit wide and then reaching back and like, and she did that 2 or 3 times just to people before Mark ran up and was like, hey, don't shoot anybody, and then whispered something or just like got close and talked to her for a bit. Okay. The other thing that came out was that on his social media, on Mark's social media, that that he had said he was there to crush snowflake skulls or something along that. So there's all this stuff, right? They came there to murder people. That was like it's like they came there with the intent of getting somebody in a position that they could shoot them and then getting away with it. This is like classic right-wing death squad shit, right? You know, immediately like the first night after I got shot, after they shot me, I guess there's always that like construction of reality. So the first night after they shot me, I woke up in the hospital and you know, kind of made that like immediate press release that I don't remember very well. Yeah. But basically saying like, hey, you know, I want restorative justice. Yeah. I, you know, don't want to see people in prison, et cetera, et cetera. And my beliefs on that haven't changed.
No, that was incredibly striking.
Yeah.
I mean, that like resonated with a lot of people. It was pretty remarkable, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's, I think what's kind of like, there's a really interesting thing to talk about just in that like specific point in that specific moment, right? Yeah. So they wanted to silence people, right? So the Hukuanas, right? Like they had come there, like the whole thing, right? The Milo Yiannopoulus like event, right, was about carrying out violence against people, right? Promoting violence against people and silencing people, making people afraid, right?
So yeah, definitely.
Right?
Like calling people out by name.
Right. It's like it's intended to create a system of fear and bullying to like stop people from talking and take away people's voices.
Yeah, right? And that specific one, he was, I guess, set to out. Well, did he finish that speech or did he? He
mostly finished it. I think they didn't even end it when I got shot. That's the thing. Like.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still like I haven't seen any of it. I can't like I saw like part of it. I think at one point where he like, you know, said that I got shot.
He acknowledged the fact that he just kept going.
Yeah, and then like kept going. He was like, "Oh, if we stop now, they win." Like you're asshole. People shot me. So
right. I think he was also trying to make the audience think that maybe it was one of theirs.
Oh yeah. No, I mean that was the whole thing.
Was for for the whole day.
Yeah. So that happened immediately. So they were like, oh, it must have. They started off with.
You said I just want to make it clear what you were saying. Like, it's about making people afraid and it's about targeting people, because he specifically has like outed trans people.
Yes.
And said to a bunch of like knuckle dragging goons that go to these things, you know, like, you know, make this person's life hell more or less, and get their pictures up and dehumanize them. And Also, he's also outed, like, was it immigrants or
Yeah, so undocumented immigrants, or like one of the targets, trans folks, like, you know, any number of people. So, like, his whole thing is about creating a culture of fear, especially, like, you know, just generally leftist, liberal, like, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, there was always a bunch of Nazi flyers, like, or like identity rope of flyers around campus afterwards.
Yeah.
It was on.
Yeah, even at
campus.
that point, it was following up was Atomwaffen, which is like a Nazi terrorist group, like legit, like, you know, build dirty bombs, blow up shit.
I was
like,
trying to, you were talking about that last time.
yeah. There's like they are like very like very very serious terrorist group who believes that like the way in which to create their white like nationalist state is through acts of terrorism, like overt acts. So that's like
real terrorists.
Yeah, like very very serious terrorists.
White nationalist terrorists.
Yeah. So the whole like point of this event was to like silence people, right? And what they ended up doing ultimately was like basically giving me a platform to talk about, you know, the fact that like that the prison system and the police system doesn't bring justice. It like just takes away our power to be able to achieve justice. Right?
Yeah.
Which is like a that's kind of an interesting thing. And like another interesting thing is like, well, they ended up giving me a platform through their act of violence, right? If they had not done anything, if they hadn't have shot me, they would still be unknown. Like their existence would be erased, you know, over the course of time. Because like ultimately they like, you know, on the larger sense of things are not important people, right? And this is part of like the larger class war and stuff like that. Like the very ideology that they promoted and they attacked me over, like in order to promote, was the ideology is the same ideology that silences them and has historically silenced them. And so like on the one hand we're like, you know, they don't realize it, but you know, we are on the same side, right? Like we are both, you know, we were all facing a larger system of oppression, right? And the system of oppression, you know, both wants them to like murder people, right? And then also punishes them for doing it, right?
And makes money the whole time.
Yeah, right? Because it's like, oh, look, another person to put in prison to make signs like the one over on like Othello and like whatever. Yeah, there's a prison made sign. Anyway,
What is the sign? I'm sorry.
so there's like a turn sign over in like near the Othello station at the south end of it, that like says in little tiny letters or little tiny words like correctional corporation, which is slave labor. Okay, basically.
They're making 20 cents a day or something.
Yeah, and like so there's
You'll get that when you get out in 20 years.
Right? Or it pays for you being in there, right?
Pays for your commissary.
Or some craziness like that. Yeah, so like, you know, so the system that like this, it's a system that like has silenced them. It's a system that would have given me a voice anyway. Like if it hadn't been for me getting shot, right? Like there were still plenty of other things that I've been working on and would be working on. Within the corporate realm, within like whatever, I'm successful at my job. You're
a successful programmer.
Right? And
like
so,
an activist in the community that, you know, whatever fame or recognition means.
Like this would have happened. Like so I would have been through this anyway. They would have continued to be silenced had it not been for this. And so like. The system that I'm opposing is the same system that is crushing them, that has silenced them, and that has driven them to this point. And to continue on that, right? Like, you know, there's also this side where, you know, one of the many, you know, common arguments against like anarchists, right, is like, oh, well, what about police? And like, of course, as soon as like, you know, of course, that's something that gets, you know, pulled out here, where it's like, well, the police now are basically on my side. Right?
On your side.
Technically, the state
taking care of you.
yeah. Technically, the state is trying to punish people who attack me, right? But punishment isn't justice, so that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Like, how is punishment not justice?
Oh, so like, what I care about in terms of justice, well, what is justice, right? Is actually like, I mean, that's like really a fundamental question.
Right. I wanted you to elaborate, but honestly, I'm not sure I have the answer. Is it like everybody gets their due for like the good or bad they done, or is it just like evenly distributed?
Right. What is justice?
Goodness,
What is justice
like,
in an unequal society? Unequal
I
society.
think, so like this is a thing. I think that part of the question of like what is justice is something we all kind of like have to answer for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But we also like there are a lot of aspects to it, right? Like one is what does it do? What does the thing do for the victim, right? So like we don't have a justice system in the United States. We have a retribution
system.
A punishment system, right?
Yeah.
And so what it gets, what the state is offering me is revenge. That's not what I want.
No.
And like the reason, the reason that I don't want that is that like, ethically I don't believe in that. But I also like, what does it mean for something to be just, right? Like there is something about like if a person doesn't fully understand like the consequences of their actions, or if they like are doing a thing that like they've been convinced to do but isn't like real, like if somebody's like let's just assume that somebody is completely brainwashed, and like or somebody's like on acid, right? And they've been like convinced that so and so is a dragon, I don't know, whatever, right? Like some absurd thing, right? And they go do something, right? Like there's some kind of like mitigating factor there, right? Like if somebody's been like dosed, right, and it wasn't their like decision to take acid, and then they were like like a kind of absurd scenario here, but like at some point you say like, well, there's something weird here, right? Like this doesn't completely make sense that this person would be punished the same for carrying out this action while they're like dosed as somebody who like chose to do it intentionally, or whatever, right? And doesn't the responsibility go to the person who like convinced this person to do these things, right? Like where does that kind of lie? And it's like all really, really complex, right?
That's why the state discerns between crimes of passion and premeditated crimes. So.
Right. And so there's the beginning of like kind of a little bit of like malleability in the system, right?
Yeah.
And like another thing is like
it's been fought for.
Yeah. Another thing is like is 12 years or whatever they're potentially facing in prison equal to trying to murder me? I don't know if that's something that you can really figure out.
Yeah.
During the arraignment, the state provided a platform for my attackers to re-victimize me. So like basically to claim that I have all of these horrible things so that I should have been murdered, right? That's not justice, right, in any way, right? Because that like is something that actively harms the victim. So like re-victimization is definitely not a part of justice, right? And like so like for me, like I don't see anything that's not like I can't really see anything that's not like healing for both parties, that doesn't move both parties forward, like or hold everyone accountable who is accountable, like. It really is something that could possibly be justice, right? Another thing to think about is like that our current the American justice system, the American legal system, is based on this individualist ideology. It's based on the idea that I am responsible for my own actions, and you are responsible for your actions, and there are fundamentally no systemic forces that exist. Right, and of course this is like paper thin false, like blatantly obviously false, because like we have statistics, right? We have, there is this a thing called epidemiological criminology. Epidemiological criminology tracks crime as the same way that the disease can be tracked. And you can trace it back to a source, and you can say like this, this is the source of the infection, right? And you can intercept. And so like, there's been a very successful program in a few cities, and I don't remember off the top of my head, where community members, obviously like this is within the context of the police system, so it's not perfect, but police may identify, or some like community may identify, people may identify somebody who is a high risk for being involved in a shooting. People from the community will come in, elders of the community will come in and like intercept and talk to like a youth who's at risk for violence, and de-escalate, and it overall like reduces violence. This has been tried multiple times, right?
Systemically, like within that community.
So we have epidemiological criminology, we have social psychology, we have all these things that show that, of course, like the individualist ideology around crime and punishment, like, is invalid.
And it's actually what creates the crime, the culture of criminality.
Right.
Because the more engaged someone is with their community, the less likely they are to act out as an individual. Like,
right, or if their parents are taken and tortured for however many years in a prison, right? Or kidnapped from them, right? Or like or murdered. Right,
got a bomb dropped on them.
Like all of these things, like promote this crime, right? So it makes the community less, like the crime and punishment thing makes the community less safe. So it makes the community less safe. It is not consistent with scientific understanding. It doesn't promote healing of the victim. It doesn't improve like the perpetrator. It doesn't like make them a better person in any way. It's functionally of no value unless you account for profits of the prison industrial complex. Or there's another interesting facet, and that is maintaining the ideology that allows capitalism to continue to exist, right? Because as soon as you say that the situational forces can drive someone to do something bad, you can say the same thing about somebody who does something that's so-called good or whatever, right? Which is like capitalism is fundamentally an ideology of an individualist ideology, right? Where you are rewarded for your actions, right? So if you recognize the possibility that crime might be situational, then you also have to recognize that wealth is equally situational, and all of the rich people don't deserve their money, and the system collapses. Right? So you have to torture people in order to make people rich. Right?
Right on.
So I call that not justice. So when I think about justice, like I'm gonna like annihilate all of those earlier concepts and look and say like, what are the things that would make me feel more safe? What are the things that would help me heal? What are the things that would help this other person heal?
What is justice in this situation?
And when I look at that, right, I don't see the legal system being really much if any of a positive influence, because like I was saying, like at the same time that the police are supposedly protecting me, they also made this possible, right? The existence of police. Like the whole basis of the shooting, right, is that the Hokoanas believed they would get away with it, that they would be protected by state forces because they would be using the law to legally murder people. It is, in fact, the existence of police that made it possible for them to shoot me and feel like they could get away with it, right? Because if the police weren't there, then like there'd be the risk that somebody would just come hunt them down for shooting me, right? Like, so the argument like, oh, what about the police, right? Well, the police make this possible. So again, like even in this weird way, we are now in some ways positioned on the same side, right? Where the police are like persecuting them, right, for their actions, but also made their actions possible, make the actions of Nazis who attack and kill people possible all over the place, believing that they will be protected by the law. So that's kind of interesting. And so getting back to, what would a justice system look like? What would an actual justice system look like? It would have to promote healing for everybody. Like, I feel strongly that there's a very, very, very small group of people who might be dangerous regardless.
Well, that's like just a statistical likelihood. 2% of the population is going to be sociopathic or something.
It's a little less than 1%.
Okay.
I think it might even be like 1/10 of 1%, but expresses it like 10% in CEOs.
Yeah, right.
Funny enough, right?
Yeah.
Which is another interesting thing, right? Like I also have ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. Which expresses at I think the numbers are 8 to 10% of the general population, but I think as much as 25% of the prison population.
Oh yeah,
which is really interesting.
Not surprising. Right? Yeah.
So my immediate reaction to this system is well, if we look at the statistics, fuck that system in every way.
Yeah.
A justice system would heal everybody, and I think one of the things that's part of what I've been trying to bring as much as possible by, talking about this and talking about alignments and ways in which some things are similar. It's there's people Yiannopoulus and Richard Spencer and all of these
base stick man,
awful people. God damn. All of these awful people, right? Is that they're promoting violence directly, right? And in case of a stickman, he's
literally
beating people with sticks, and nobody's stopping him.
No, they champion it because of the violent left.
Right.
It's just a response to the violent left.
And so this system, the ideology on the right, this sort of individualist, fascistic, straight individualist, and also ultra authoritarian and top down weird.
Right. They don't realize how much power they're forfeiting.
Yeah.
By
right.
By supporting this whole system. Yeah.
And also, it's also funny because I talk to, or every once in a while I'll just go and talk to one of these folks on Twitter or something like that. I had this long conversation. Yeah. I had this long conversation with this Trump supporter, and said something about oh well, they we know that the left is bad because they take away guns, and authoritarian countries always take away guns. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, historically, the left has supported gun rights, Ronald Reagan was the first person to introduce gun control for racist reasons because of the Black Panthers. Mm-hmm.
In California.
And if you look, if you pay attention, police are often enforce. Often take away guns in very specific communities. Yeah. They already do that. They actually are actively taking away guns. In fact, what we really see is that in authoritarian countries, police take away guns from people who are not reactionaries.
Yeah.
Right? They don't take away all the guns. They take away the guns from the people who aren't reactionaries, and they make sure that the people who are reactionaries have the guns. And that's classically exactly what the United States has done since the very beginning.
Yeah. Not to get too far in it, but the modern police force.
Oh yeah.
Was basically constructed as a way to keep slaves on plantation property.
Slave patrols. Yeah.
Patrols,
yeah. Well, historically, yeah. So
it was birthed out of slave patrols. Basically.
It's So our modern, basically a lot of the modern right is based on, history of old slave laws and things like that, right? Like all, I think it was like all white men were required to own guns and like nobody else could have one, right? Which is so much like what they're trying to make exist, using exactly the same like racist rhetoric, right?
Yeah.
They used to say like N-word lover, now they say liberal, and it means the same thing if you look at it in context, right? Like, and so it's like it's part of the really like horrible, fascinating thing is looking at the arguments that people make today, for the right, and and they're all the same arguments. They're all the same arguments that that Malcolm X called out in like the 60s, right? And they're all the same tactics.
Stuck in a loop.
They're all the same, all the same. That's how absolutely uncreative like white folks in power are, right?
But in all of us too at the same time, because if we had come up with a good counter argument that is clearly understandable,
but it is because if you listen to Malcolm X talking about what is if you read the newspapers you'll have he was clear, he was extremely clear, he was intelligent, he said things in a way that were really really obvious and well put together and all of these things, and and we've been told not to listen. Yeah. Right. I remember growing up with the whole thing about MLK was a good guy and that the Panthers and Malcolm X were bad people. They were too radical, or they were reverse racist. That was right. And then when you read any of the things that any of them say, right, this is within the context of time, and sometimes even within the context of now, it's that's
timeless.
Really, really on point, intelligent, well put, clear, effective, all the things that we could possibly say, but they're ignored because of the racist history of America.
Mm-hmm. And because the way that media works, it perpetuates a dialogue or a narrative that works to reinforce power. Because because of course it does, because of anybody who is in a position to own parts of the airwaves, right, it has a certain relationship to the state and maintaining the status quo. The status quo,
right? Yeah. And they'll pay anybody below them, right? A certain wage that puts them in a certain relationship. And so it's not possible. Historically, it hasn't been possible for media to exist that isn't oriented in support of the state. Yeah. Right. Or of the status quo in one way or another.
Yeah. Or a means, an average. Sort of, that's what the mainstream is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the best indicator of what everyone's thinking in a way. It's this big, slow-moving indicator. But
everyone.
Everyone. I mean, it's it is literally an average of everything that's out there in a lot of ways,
I think that's I don't know that that's necessarily true. I don't know
and that when Beyonce fucking does her thing at the football, at the Beyonce's halftime show. Doing a Malcolm X march, basically, in the middle of one of the most reactionary fucking focal points in the country. Is an indicator that there's a large portion of the population that's pulling. What is the term for it? It's the Milgram something line or whatever the hell it's called. Some guy came up, some philosopher came up with that concept of what the great average is of the philosophical.
Oh yeah, the window or whatever thing.
I think the window.
I think that even
the Overton window.
I think that one of the things that we really need to look at is even looking at the ideological spectrum, right? The concept that there's, first of all, the concept that there's an ideological spectrum, a continuum, right? We started off,
and then it's linear.
The beginning of what up through to maybe the 60s or something like that. No, 90s, I think. People would talk about the political continuum of right and left, and then libertarians were like, well, no, wait, it's a square.
It's 2D.
We have other dimensions. and then but even that is necessarily limiting, right?
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
Oh, so there's the continuum
between authoritarian and it's authoritarian to libertarian.
the political compass.
Yeah,
Okay.
the political compass being treated. So there's people tend to think of left and right,
Yeah.
and then try to lump these things together that don't necessarily work, because there are points at which left and right meet, of course. Because there's that one that a lot of people throw around is the 2D representation that's authoritarian to libertarian on one side, and then socialist to capitalist on the other, or something.
Yeah, it's communist capitalist or something.
Yeah.
Free market, because they're fucking libertarians.
Right. Right.
American libertarians.
So yeah, there's libertarian socialists and libertarian capital. There's anarcho-capitalists and there's anarcho-communists and shit. You know?
But yeah, so even that's such a weak thing, right? Because if we think about it, what we really have is just entire topologies of belief systems that are
an ecosystem.
intercepts and just and so there's so many such complexity and we spend so much time putting different things into binaries, right?
Kind of boxing in,
yeah. So that's just kind of that's an interesting, I guess, side.
It is. I mean, it's when you try to talk to a right winger who loves MLK, but you're just looking at Patriot Prayer.
I was thinking about that just now. Actually, we were looking at Patriot Prayer, and the first thing you see is a picture of Martin Luther King.
MLK is standing behind a podium, probably at Washington or whatever, right? And they're do they know that he was a socialist?
No,
I think they might know.
They have to, but they don't. When you talk,
that would be that's the bad
thing.
Part of him, right? But we just care about
the peace and love part,
right?
Because they're so peaceful.
So, for the record, in the Pacific Northwest, Patriot Prayer is this crypto-fascist, far-right group of serial masturbators and Nazis and far-right Christians who regularly hold hate rallies in the West Coast.
But I mean, I think that that's a really interesting thing, also to kind of look at is the ways in which, historically that white supremacy has whitewashed or seized onto people and selectively quoting things, or even for example the entire concept, the entire way that Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi and all of these folks are talked about is intended to be a counter-revolutionary thing, because they don't talk about the ways in which for example Gandhi talked about violence.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't say you should never use violence or anything like that. What he said was that violence is that nonviolence is the most powerful tool.
As it is.
If you can use it.
It's pretty objectively true.
Yeah, I think that's totally true, right? And that's what I have tried to do, in talking to the prosecutor and advocating for restorative justice rather than prison. Right? I've talked to the prosecutor. I've asked that this is my ethical, but also I think that it's important for my healing and et cetera, et cetera. That and also I think that we have an opportunity now, or we would have had a great opportunity in the past to talk about the ways in which these ideologies have harmed everybody, including the people who adhere to them, right? And the best way that we can possibly do that is to talk to people who are trapped within those ideologies and help them escape, because they are often the most powerful people, and they're the people who are positioned the best to attack the ideology, right? So going back to kind of the thing of we all have these sort of topologies of beliefs, right? And some of them overlap and they map to each other, and you can say, look at that mountain over there, let me tell you how to get to it, right? Like, if things overlap, right? But you can go and you can talk to somebody who's like a Nazi, right? And if you don't have like a bunch of like sort of land here, right? Like in your brain that you like or have experienced, or that you have some kind of way to like understand these things, there's this big gap. Because like there's a lot of people where if I talk to them, I'm just like, I don't understand how you exist. How do you possibly believe the thing that you believe?
What happened to you? Like, what have you gone through in your life to have brought you to such a hateful place? Yeah.
And
what happened to you?
I mean, like, and to some degree, like, we have to be aware of that in ourselves as well, right? Like, there are, I've kind of like I said this on the air, before, right? That like, when it's possible to not punch Nazis and to like have conversations with them, if a person has the capability to do that, right? If you are not like pushed over the edge, if you're not like triggered by your like past or like whatever, if you have the like all of the things ready to do that, like it can be extremely helpful, because we might be able to actually bring that person over and bring that person out of like where they are at.
To heal their pain, the pain that they're probably
and
expressing through that sort of ideology.
Right. And if we immediately see them as like an unsavable enemy, like we don't have the capacity to do that.
Right.
That said, there are a lot of people who I could understand like seeing a person as like this is my enemy and there's no question about it.
Well, it's also, I mean, I guess it gets into the thing where like if somebody's like a Nazi or like if somebody's like a Nazi or like the alt-right or whatever, their terms of engagement is not around, it's kind of like it's not based in anything. It's more like I'm going to say something smart, and I don't know, like not particularly caring about people, and then people get worked up because they care for humanity. On the left side is generally the thing, or anybody really that isn't super far right. I think that's like their terms of engagement are. I mean, it's hard to get through to them, I guess. Is that like if you put, I don't know.
I mean that's totally true, right? And like, there's a bunch of reasons why I think it's like, so like on the one hand, I'll say like, hey, if it's at all possible to do this, like totally do this. On the other hand, like a lot of the times it's not possible, and just like, and so like never fault someone for punching a Nazi. Like we'll never condemn somebody, like because I don't know where their experiences are, the ways in which they might be triggered, or like that they may be right, maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
And so and I think that's like one of the many things to kind of like think about is like if we can like push things in a different direction, if we can like get people out of those positions, like that's great. And if we can use systems of I feel like we need to be thinking about how we hold people who allow that behavior to happen accountable, right? Because like maybe we can't do anything, like maybe we can't reach the Nazi or the like Republican who's basically a Republican because he's a Nazi and he's trying to cover for it, or like whatever. But like sometimes we can hold accountable people, or like pull people out who are like a Republican because of some belief that they have that like they don't really understand, or they've been driven to believe, to like demonize the left without understanding anything about what like, or demonize anarchists,
which is really probably a large majority of Republicans,
right? And like
subject
good majority of liberals.
We're just subject to propaganda, and generally their lives are so comfortable that they don't feel they need to engage politically whatsoever.
Right.
And then they're just kind of like herded to the polling station every 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
At 20% or whatever the fucking population that actually votes anymore.
And is allowed to vote.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even get into how dehumanizing the actual prison system is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And
how horribly
like
dehumanizing that is.
I think like it's kind of interesting because like I feel like I've kind of become like more and more radicalized over time as well. Like even after like being shot, like I was like becoming more radical, and I've become like much more radical in a lot of ways. Right?
Oh wait, so becoming more before being shot? You mean?
Yeah. Like like during the election.
Because I can see how getting shot would fucking radicalize. It's like pretty fucking obvious.
Radicalized to the point of gun.